Nice Shorts theme song.
Nice shorts. Yeah.
I am super fan of your work. Very thankful that you say yes to PFCAT and having time with us today.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for the invite. Yeah, it's excited to join the festival. It's the first time I ever been to a film festival in Portland. So it's like finally I got a chance to see some local animators and filmmakers all together.
For Siqi's film, it's like a documentary series. She creates change. And
Hmm.
can you share, like, for your episode, which girl are you portraying that story?
Yeah, so in this episode that I directed, it's called Dewmini. It was like the story happened in 2019 and 2020. It's about this girl who lives in Sri Lanka, but there's an extreme drought that happening in that area. Her family tried to arrange her to work as a domestic servant in order to exchange for some food and money for their whole family. She feels really devastated to have to drop out of school in order to survive. But in the end, she has found a way to actually grow drought-tolerant plants and produce in her own garden. Because of that, her family is able to survive and even have extra food to share with her neighbors in her village. So it was a quite inspiring story of her and then the education that she got from the charity we're making the stories from. It's called Room to Read, and then they offer like free education for girls in that South Asia areas who didn't have the resources in their own family to support their education. So that was a really inspiring story, and then I'm really pleasure to have the opportunity to tell her story to the world.
Yeah, one of my question is that how does this invitation come to you? And because there are multiple different stories, so as a
Mhm.
director, do they directly assign you to the Domini story, or you actually can choose like what speak up to you the most?
Actually, when the story come to me, it was only Dewmini's story. I didn't
Mhm.
really get a chance to pick
Easy
other
choice then.
stories. Yeah, but that's where the producers come in, right? They first found the Room to Read first. If you like look up their website and look up what they do, they actually have a book that they collaborate with the Rebel Girls. They have like hundreds of stories of the students in their programs that they want to like actually advocate and then tell to the even younger students. So they do have lots of materials to work with. So they found Nexus Studio, and then the producers, they know my previous work, they know what my interests are and also my style. So they actually, when they read the story, they probably think, oh, this is like a sushi story. It was not a script. Like when I received the documents from about Dewmini, which is like actually a 20 or 30 pages long like questionnaire about
Wow.
interviewing her and also the interviewing her like mentors and teachers in a school. So basically like a really long document, questions that they asked Dewmini and Dewmini write down and then being translated to English.
Mm.
Yeah, and also like photos of her and her family, even the gardens, and then like the plants that she grow. So I have like lots of information about her and then the story as well.
How do you give it the appropriate touch of like the treatment of how severe it is while keeping it feeling optimistic and bright? Like, how do you strike that balance?
Hmm. I feel like the importance of telling the story, it is because how severe the situation is, not just for her, for like many other people as well. But I think for me, like optimism is always what I like about film because, like there are lots of hardships in real life, but it is art that make people finding hope and finding happiness from it. And then that's why her story is so inspiring because, regardless how severe her situation is, that she still find a way to actually find a solution and find hope in her film. So I kind of really want to emphasize on that part of the story. Growing up in China, all my parents, they all work in agriculture. And then in the history of China, there are lots of like food shortage and, because of the drought, because of the flooding happened, when I was a child. So my family was always educating me to, not wasting food and then like make sure that, always ask me if I'm like well fed because as long as I have enough food or I eat good food, I'm okay. So I think that's kind of like what makes the story resonate a lot is about families and what you can do with the food and how pressure that is that for the food, like, in our life, because lots of people take them for granted. And then I think that's what I want people to see from the film is like, don't take, any food and any small things in your life for granted. And then it's always hopeful if you are worth it.
Yeah, beautiful to see the connection. And now when I thinking of what you have created, oh, there's a lot of food theme or food characters actually.
It is. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's just like always for me. I always feel like the connection of food and emotions, regardless in every aspect of life. The live action part was shot after the animation is finished.
Mm.
Oh,
So some of them are quite inspired by the animation we created. When we produced it, they didn't have the resources or like access to go to the, Dewmini's family to film them. So
Yeah.
after that, they actually shot lots of them to matching up with the animation we produced. So like for me, when I got the materials, it's more like think of it as a fiction rather than a documentary.
mm,
So like, it's animation. So part of it is, the fantasies we can add to the film.
this is amazing. Like it is you digging out all the first-hand material and figure out the shot and how to tell the story. I thought it was part of the live action you get to see because
Hmm.
when we watch the film, they really mirror to each other.
Yeah,
You
it's feel
won.
like
Yeah.
they're interacting with each other, like the
Mhm.
material come from real life, but after the creation of the animators, they kind of like influence how they do the documentary and in real life as well. I was working on this like fully remote because it's like a really small budget for charity. So we didn't have like enough budget to actually fly me over there to work. But the stop motion studio who actually fabricate and shot everything is called Siqi Home Studio. They are based in Birmingham in the UK. So they are the one who actually animate everything.
Wow.
Where I was just like mostly directing them through online. And then, yeah, it was quite a long process because, for slow motion, right, it's totally different than animating
Mm.
with 2D and 3D, which is, relatively easier to direct remotely. But for slow motion, like we have to actually maybe like produce one shot or maximum two shot every day because I'm not there. So they actually have to wait for me to give them feedback before they can, take the camera off and then do
First-
another shot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To you, would that be the first time to really fully remote directing a stop motion production?
Yeah, it's probably
Wow.
the only time. But the studio was really nice. They give us like enough time to actually do this shot by shot. So it was like a quite luxury to do it. And then it also like quite challenging because I can't really fully understand the space of the set, the puppet, like, so when we're talking about the camera movement, like, like what kind of things that we can do. Like, I'm so used to be able to, go into the set and touch it and then like, try out the cameras, but
Mm.
it was not easy to do it remotely. The scale and then physical touch is quite important for stop motion. So it's quite a lot of to learn.
So when you were setting up lighting and whatnot, what was that process?
Yeah, I think like for the lighting, we have quite a good reference like in concept art and then like even the early design to showcase like what kind of lightings this set or these scenes should be. Maybe like before we start a sequence, we'll just like check on what kind of lighting back and forth several times. And then, once that kind of like overall look is locked, then like for the next week or so, like we don't have to recheck on the lighting. It's mostly just talk about the shots.
Did you have
Mm.
like a live feed to watch while they did the lighting, or was it just send you a photo and
Mostly you send me the photo, especially like the photo from the camera, because that's definitely most accurate lightings that you can get.
yeah.
You can see preview.
What that must have been a strange experience for you.
Yeah, it is. I mean, yeah, I feel like, that's, you just do what you can do to make films.
Yeah. Oh, another thing I'm curious is that from your past work, like your personal films, I enjoy your fabrication and design. But in this production, you are working with different visual development artists. So how
Hmm.
is that experience for you?
Yeah, it was quite interesting. I feel like definitely is a good experience for me because when I was working on my own or with my own chosen materials, like it was fun to explore and then like actually get really good puppets or sets out of it. But working with other like, fabricators, designers, and animators, or actually, bring up a lot of new ideas that I would probably not figure out or like come up with myself. Because
Mm.
for this project, I initially think about materials. I really want to incorporate lots of paper materials in it because I feel like this story is about the shortage of water. And I would think, oh, can I use watercolor or like what kind of like paper materials that kind of bring lots of like water elements from it, from the visuals. So I thought that would be a nice idea. So I just talked to the fabricators and then, yeah, they actually did lots of tests from the puppets and then from the plants. You can see lots of vegetables in the films are like made from watercolor on paper. I think that was a really nice look from the film I envisioned from the beginning. And also like there are some scenes that actually quite surprising for me because I didn't think that when I was designing the film. Like for example, there's this underground scene when Dewmini is like a little seed
Yeah.
I
in
love that.
like
It's
Okay.
really
yeah,
cool.
so that was quite interesting because I didn't think, oh, how are we gonna make the seed, right? And then they just like pitched to me, they tell me, oh, can we use this corn husk that like as the main material of the shells of the seed because you can create like really nice backlightings and also from the corn husk you can create this like illuminating kind of seed scenes, which I
Mm.
thought was like a brilliant idea, which we didn't think about when we're doing the visual designs on paper. But once you start the fabrication process, I think that idea just come in, and then like I thought that was like really nice collaboration result.
Yeah.
And then also, we have done some like, modifications since the design and the fabrication because, originally, when we're designing the characters, we're based on the real life characters, and then they are quite slim, most of the character because, the story is about their food shortage. So it was quite challenge for the fabrication like the puppet making because normally if you see like a typical stop motion puppet they will have large feet and large hands and large eyes because that's like easier to fabricate and for animation to be to be animated
Yeah.
but because it's like I think that's quite important that we keep the original figures that we designed for the film and then they actually find a way to make it like in a way that it doesn't like jeopardize our designs because we're trying to keep everything so small and tiny that actually the puppet are like not that big. It's like quite relatively small compared to other productions I've done. In order to make that, we actually keep all the hands and toes all together. So they're like not separate. They're all like very connected because it's easier to cast and mold like all together instead of doing individually. Because in that case, you're end up with like very bulky fingers and stuff.
Yeah.
So only in several close-up shots, we built like separate finger, oversized hands for those
Ah.
particular shots. But for most of the wide shots, we just keep them all together. I think
Yeah.
that small things like this, you just start to appreciate like,
Yeah.
people's like, like very smart ways to actually solve the problem.
I
Yeah.
totally
Thank
didn't notice until you mentioned it either. Yeah. I was just
Yeah.
looking right now on the side. I'm like, oh, yeah, I didn't realize they all have webbed hands.
That is cool. Yeah, I love this aspect.
For the nature of this project that we cannot have like a full-time animator with us all the time and then so because of that like we actually have probably 5 or 6 animators come in like because when they're free they come in to do a shot or if they're not here then we have to change to another animator so
Oh,
it was quite a lot of like new faces every day to actually talk to But I think like, that's the job of as a director, right? You have to like, actually brief and communicate with everybody on the team to make sure that they understand what the film is about and then what our overall goal is for finishing this film, and then to tell them what's going on, what we did like the day before or what the plan is for the next day. So they are mostly they are like very well informed and they can do their job very nicely on the time they are with us.
So was at least the first animator there long enough to get like the movements down for everyone else to follow, or was it just everyone kind of did their thing?
Well, I think like our goal is definitely like finish one shot like per day or like with one animator, so then we don't have like constantly switching animators, even with one shot, right? That's quite important for them to finish, at least one or two like in the sequence. Um yeah, but I think like the overall animation, because we don't have lots of like characters, mostly just like Dewmini. So
Mm.
I think like her actions are pretty easier to understand and then to find that neutral like performance that we all liked.
Mm.
It is a pleasure to screen Siqi Change Dewmini at PFCAT. Sharing the film with the audience in Portland is really important to me, and I appreciate the opportunity to be part of the festival. And I hope everyone enjoyed the film and the interview. Thank you.
What should I do? Huh? Wow.